ancient Mesopotamia. Now, Mesopotamia, if you don't know, that is where? That's a location where Iraq, Iran, and all those Middle Eastern countries are located right now. That's where this epic originated. The literary history of Gilgamesh begins with the Sumerian poems about Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, dating from the 3rd dynasty of Ur, you know? So we know that there's a ziggurat of Ur as well, and that's a giant step pyramid that exists right there in Iraq. As a matter of fact, there's a tunnel leading underneath the ziggurat of Ur all the way to the Giza Plateau in Egypt, which is in Africa. So we have 12 tablets here, okay? 12 amazing tablets of information that predate most texts that exist. Tablet number 1. He who has seen everything, I will make known. To the lands I will teach about him who experienced all things alike. Anu granted him the totality of knowledge of all. Now, who is Anu? A-N-U. Anu is the god or the king or the head person of the Anunnaki. Anu is the father of Enki and Enlil. Okay, he's the head, he's the leader. All right, so at the time he actually is the king. King of Nibiru. Anu granted him the totality of knowledge of all. So we're talking about Gilgamesh being granted the ability to access a high level of knowledge. He saw the secret, discovered the hidden. He brought information of all time before the flood. This is a pre-diluvial text. We're talking about before the great flood. And you're going to see in this later on, as I get to those later tablets, about Utnapishtim, who's actually the same person as Ziusudra, who really is Noah. And he's got to build this ark. And you're going to see some incredible information about this ark, and the shape of the ark doesn't match the shape of the biblical ark. He saw the secret, discovered the hidden. He brought information of the time before the flood. He went on a distant journey, pushing himself to exhaustion, but then was brought to peace. He carved on a stone stela all of his toils and built the wall of Uruk Haven, the wall of the sacred Eanna temple, the holy sanctuary. Look at this wall, which gleams with copper. Inspect its inner wall, the likes of which no one can equal. Take hold of the threshold stone. It dates from the ancient times. Go close the Eanna temple, the residence of Ishtar. Who is Ishtar? Ishtar is the reason why you celebrate Easter, okay? She was the fertility goddess in Babylonian times. And the actual holiday of Easter, which is celebrated mostly by Christians, is actually the celebration of fertility of Ishtar, the Babylonian Anunnaki goddess. This is why they have the eggs and the bunnies laying the eggs. It's a fertility thing. It has nothing to do with resurrections. So if you've been celebrating Easter all this time, you've been celebrating and you've been worshiping Ishtar. Okay? Now you know. Check this out. 1 league city, 1 league palm garden. So from the city, there's a league to the palm gardens. And from the palm gardens, there's another league to the lowlands. The open area of Ishtar Temple, 3 leagues, and the open area of Uruk is the wall encloses. We're talking about a super megalithic wall that encloses this entire area. Now, Gilgamesh went through every hardship, supreme over other kings, lordly in appearance. He is the hero. He walks out in front, the leader. and walks in the rear, trusted by his champions. Mighty net, protector of his people. Raging flood wave who destroys even the walls of stone. They're describing Gilgamesh now. So we're talking about the fact that this man, first of all, he's a giant. He's described as a giant. He's incredibly massive. This is a big, big person. You'll see, if you Google Gilgamesh or the Epic of Gilgamesh, you'll see that he's holding a lion in one arm across his chest, a full-size grown male lion with the mane and all. And it looks like a kitty cat in his arms almost. This is how big this guy was. But he has knowledge of how to build, how to construct, of advanced technology. He also has the capability of traveling, not around his local area, but around the world. Okay, around the world. He explored the world regions. He didn't explore around the corner. He didn't explore the next village. He explored the world. So every time we keep talking about these ancestors, man, and we think that they don't know anything and that they're dumb and what they say has no value, it's like spitting in their face. Seeking life. That was the reason why he was traveling the world, seeking life. It was he who reached by his own sheer strength, Upanishtim. We're talking about Noah now, the faraway, who restored the sanctuaries or cities that the flood destroyed. 2/3 of him is God. 1/3 of him is human. Now let me say that again. 2/3 of him is God. 1/3 of him is human. He's 2/3 Anunnaki and 1/3 human. If you want to understand the mix of his genetics and why he was so brilliant, why his IQ was so vast, why his strength and his size were incredible, and why he was considered to be a hero. He was mostly Anunnaki DNA. The great goddess Uruk designed the model for his body. She prepared his form, beautiful and handsome of men, perfect. We're talking about the fact that they genetically created him. Now, they didn't create him from scratch as if they created a person out of nothing. But right now, today, and I have a friend who's done this with his first child, and he has a second child that they're going to do this as well. They create designer babies. He spent over $250,000 to make a designer baby. I mean, he's rich, he can do whatever he wants. They pick the hair color, they pick the eye color, they pick everything, okay? They also filter out potential genetic diseases and things like that, turn genes off, turn genes on to keep the person supposedly healthy for the most of their life. And that's something you can go do right now today in the world we live in. Well, they were doing this in ancient times. The great goddess Uruk designed the model for his body, prepared his form, beautiful and handsomest of men, perfect. Uruk washed her hands. She pinched off some clay and threw it into the wilderness. Now here's where it gets very interesting. In the wilderness, she created the valiant Enkidu. So now we're getting into some stuff that really is about genetics. Anu said, well, this guy, he's got to have a counterpart. If it's not going to be a woman, let him have a counterpart, because he wants to go on this hero's journey. He wants to keep traveling the world. Give him a companion to go with him. So they literally fashion a person. They create an entity which isn't really a human. It's more like a cyborg, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, so she doesn't give birth to this thing. She creates it somewhere outside the gates of Uruk. And check this out. When Uruk heard this, she created within herself the Zikrit of Anu. Uruk washed her hands. She pinched off some clay and threw it into the wilderness. In the wilderness, she created valiant Enkidu, born of silence, endowed with strength by Ninurta. His whole body was shaggy with hair. He had a full head of hair like a woman. His locks billowed in profusion like a shan. So he had dreadlocks. He knew neither peopled nor set a living. He didn't know human beings, and he didn't know anything about civilization or being civilized, all right? But wore a garment like Shamukan. He ate grasses with the gazelles and jostled at the watering hole with animals. As with animals, his thirst was staked by mere water. A notorious trapper came face to face with him opposite of the watering hole. At first, A second and a third day, he came back to face with him the opposite, wearing the watering hole and at the watering hole. On seeing him, the trapper's face went stark with fear, and he, Enkidu, and his animals drew back home. He was rigid with fear. Though stock still, his heart pounded with his face drained of color. He was miserable to the core, and his face looked like one who had made a long journey. The trapper addressed with his father, saying, "Father, a certain fellow has come from the mountains. He is the mightiest in the land. His strength is as mighty as the meteorite of Anu. He continually goes over the mountains. He continuously jostles at the watering place with the animals. He continually plants his feet opposite of the watering place. I was afraid, so I did not go to him. He filled in the pits that I had dug, wrenched out my traps that I had spread, released from my grasp the wild animals. He does not let me make my rounds in the wilderness." The trapper's father spoke to him, saying, "My son, there lives in Uruk a certain Gilgamesh. There is no one stronger than he. He is as strong as the meteorite of Anu. Go set off to Uruk. Tell Gilgamesh of this man and might. He will give you the harlot Shamhat. Then take her with you. The woman will overcome the fellow as if he were strong. When the animals are drinking at the water place, have her take her robe off and expose her sex. When he sees her, he will draw near to her, and his animals will grow up in the wilderness, and he will be alien to him." He heeded his father's advice. The trapper went off to Uruk. He made the journey, stood inside of Uruk, and declared to Gilgamesh, "There is a certain fellow who has come from the mountains. He is the mightiest in the land. His strength is mighty as the meteorite of Anu. He continually goes over the mountains. He continuously jostles the watering place with the animals. He continually plants his feet opposite the watering place. I was afraid, so I did not go up to him. He filled in the pits that I had dug. He wrenched out my traps that I had spread, released from my grasp the wild animals. He does not let me make my rounds in the wilderness." Gilgamesh said to the trapper, "Go, trapper, bring the harlot Shamhat with you. When the animals are drinking at the watering place, have her take off her robe and expose her sex. When he sees her, he will draw near to her, and the animals who grew up in the wilderness will be alien to him." Obviously, they're taking this female named Shamhat, and they're going to have her literally just seduce this guy so that they can get him away from the trap, so this hunter can continue to hunt and bring meat home for the village, which is probably his main source of income. Okay. The trapper went, bringing the harlot Shamhat with him. They set off on the journey, making direct way. On the third day, they arrived at the appointed place, and the trapper and the harlot sat down at their posts. A first day and the second, they sat opposite the watering hole. The animals arrived and drank at the watering hole. Then he, Enkidu, offspring of the mountains, who eats grasses with the gazelles, came to drink at the watering hole with the animals. When the wild beast he staked with water, then Shamhat saw him, a primitive, a savage fellow from the depths of the wilderness. That is he, Shamhat. Release your clenched arms, expose your sex so he can take in your voluptuousness. Do not be restrained, take his energy. He's basically saying, he's basically pimping this lady to this wild created man, saying they gotta go take one for the team so we can get back to work. Okay? She says, do not be restrained, take his energy. When he sees you, he will draw near to you. Spread out your robe so he can lie upon you and perform his primitive task of womankind. His animals, who grew up in the wilderness, will become alien to him, and his lust will groan over you. Shamhat unclutched her bosom, exposed her sex, and he took in her voluptuousness. She was not restrained, but took his energy. She spread out her robe and lay upon her. She performed the primitive task of womankind. His lust groaned over her. For 6 days and 7 nights, Enkidu stayed aroused. Okay, this guy was aroused for 6 days and 7 nights. And had intercourse with the harlot until he was sated with her charms. But when he turned his attention to his animals, the gazelle saw Enkidu and darted off. The wild animals distanced themselves from his body. Enkidu was utterly depleted. His knees wanted to go off with his animals, went rigid. Enkidu was diminished. His running was not as before. His legs were weak. And 6 days, and who knows how many rounds he went. Okay? But then he drew himself up, for his understanding had broadened. Turning around, he sat down at the harlot's feet, gazing into her face, his ears attentive as the harlot spoke. The harlot said to Enkidu, "You are beautiful, Enkidu. You are become like a god. Why do you gallop around in the wilderness with the wild beasts? Come, let me bring you to Uruk haven, to the holy temple, the residence of Anu and Ishtar, the place of Gilgamesh, who is wise to perfection." Now, what's interesting here, I want to point out, is she's going to take this Enkidu person back to Uruk haven. All right, so we're talking about going back to the kingdom. At this kingdom, Anu himself is living amongst people. One of these quote unquote gods of the tablets, and I do mean lowercase g gods, they masqueraded as gods, and his goddess Ishtar are actually living in a temple amongst regular people. So these people engaged mankind in ancient times in a way where we worshiped them, we honored them, we brought them our offerings. We thought they were real gods. They were just masquerading as gods. They weren't gods. They weren't the creator of the universe, and they themselves knew this. When is the perfect time to approach a species on a planet? When they're in their developmental stages and they're very low. If you want to violate any universal laws of engagement, which I believe that these Anunnaki beings did, if you want to violate, universal laws of engagement, you want to take advantage of a situation due to ignorance of the being or the species on a planet, you luck out if you arrive when they're in the Stone Ages. You really luck out, because then you can mold them however you want. You can get them to become your slaves without them thinking they're slaves, because they'll believe you're a god. And that's exactly what happened. She says, the residence of Anu and Ishtar, the place of Gilgamesh, who is wise to perfection, but who struts his power over the people like a wild bull. What she kept saying found favor with him. Becoming aware of himself, he sought a friend. This Enkidu now realizes knowledge of self. He didn't see himself as an animal anymore. He's beginning to see himself as a sentient being. And so now he's going to head off to this kingdom with this harlot. Enkidu spoke to the harlot. Come, Shamhat, take me away with you to the sacred holy temple, the residence of Anu and Ishtar, the place of Gilgamesh, who is wise to perfection, but who struts his power over the people like a wild bull. I will challenge him. Let me shout out in Uruk, I am the mighty one. Lead me in, and I will change the order of things. He whose strength is mightiest is the one born in the wilderness. So now he sees a challenge here. Shamhat says to Enkidu, come, let us go, so he may see your face. I will lead you to Gilgamesh. I know where he will be. Look about, Enkidu, inside Uruk haven, where the people show off in skirted finery, where every day is a day for some festival, where the lyre and the drum play continually, where harlots stand about pretty, excluding voluptuousness, full of laughter. And on the couch of the night of the sheets are spread. Enkidu, you who do not know how to live, I will show you Gilgamesh, a man of extreme feelings. Look at him, gaze in his face. He is a handsome youth with freshness. His entire body exudes voluptuousness. He is mightier and more strength than you, without sleeping a day or night. He's saying that Gilgamesh is so huge and powerful that this guy doesn't even need to go to sleep, and he still has the most power, or is the strongest being that they know of in that city, in that kingdom. Enkidu, it is your wrong thoughts you must change. It is Gilgamesh whom Shamhat loves. And Anu, Enlil, and La have enlarged his mind, even before you came from the mountain. So what she's saying is, Gilgamesh's mind, his mind had been expanded. His knowledge and wisdom had been expanded. He had taken in so much knowledge from who? Anu, his son Enlil, who was also known as Yahweh in the Bible, and La. Okay, they were talking about three people that have extremely high knowledge in the Sumerian tablets, have taken Gilgamesh in as an adept initiate and given him a supreme amount of knowledge, making him one of the wisest men on the planet. So she says, Gilgamesh got up and revealed the dream, saying to his mother, "Mother, I had a dream last night. Stars of the sky appeared, and some kind of meteorite of Anu fell next to me. I tried to lift it, but it was too mighty for me. I tried to turn it over, but it could not budge. The land of Uruk was standing around it. The whole land had assembled about it. The populace was thronging around it. The men clustered about it and kissed its feet as if it were a little baby. I loved it and embraced it as a wife. I laid down at your feet, and you made it complete with me." The mother of Gilgamesh, the wise, all-knowing, said to her lord, Riamat Ninsun, the wise, all-knowing, said to Gilgamesh, "As for the stars of the sky that appeared, and the meteorite of Anu which fell next to you, you tried to lift it, but it was too mighty for you. You tried to turn it over, but it was unable to budge. You laid it down at my feet, and I made it complete with you. And you loved and embraced it as a wife. There will come to you a mighty man, a comrade who saves his friend." So there's a prophecy coming out of this dream, and his mother is literally discerning his dream and giving him this prophecy, what's to happen and why he had this dream. To come to him is going to be a mighty man who's going to become a comrade and saves his life. He is the mightiest in the land. He is the strongest. His strength is mighty as the meteorite of Anu. You loved him and embraced him as a wife. And it is he who will repeatedly save you. Your dream is good and portuous. A second time, Gilgamesh said to his mother, "Mother, I have had another dream. At the gate of my martial chamber, there lay an axe, and people had collected about it. The land of Uruk was standing around it. The whole land assembled about it. The populace was thronging around it. I laid it down at your feet. I loved it and embraced it as a wife, and you made it complete with me." The mother of Gilgamesh, the wise, all-knowing, said to her son, Rimat Ninsun, the wise, all-knowing, said to Gilgamesh, "The axe that you saw is a man, that you love him and embrace as a wife, but that I have been complete with you. There will come to you a mighty man, a comrade who saves his friend. He is the mightiest in the land. He is the strongest. He is as mighty as the meteorite of Anu." Gilgamesh spoke to his mother, saying, "By the command of Enlil, the great counselor, so may it to pass." Okay? So now he's saying is, wow, Mom, these two dreams, you're telling me what this is leading to. Someone that's coming that I'm gonna be a really close friend with, that's gonna save my life. That is a super mighty person, maybe even potentially mightier than me. And so this is the prophecy coming from Ramat Ninsun, his mother. So it goes on saying, by the command of Enlil, great counselor, so it too may pass. May I have a friend and advisor. A friend and advisor may I have. You have interpreted for me the dreams about him. Another harlot recounted the dreams of Gilgamesh to Enkidu. The two of them made love. So the harlot is still messing around with Enkidu. I mean, Enkidu is getting a lot of, you know what? I guess after living with the animals all that time, you know, his time came. Time came due. We're talking about a great epic here that was written almost 5,000 years ago, 4,700 roughly years ago, right? We're talking about Gilgamesh, a mighty man, all right? A mighty man that was fashioned, that was created, not created from scratch as if somebody had magic, but he was a genetically created person using designer technology, just like we have designer babies right now. We're talking about a great epic here that was written almost 5,000 years ago, 4,700 roughly years ago, right? Gilgamesh, a mighty man that was fashioned, that was created, not created from scratch as if somebody had magic, but he was a genetically created person using designer technology, just like we have designer babies right now. You can go to Hollywood, go to Beverly Hills, and you can go there with $250,000 and you can make a designer baby. They will take the egg from the womb of the woman, like they did my friend's wife. They will do some genetic tinkering with that. They will inseminate that egg with the sperm of the husband, which is my friend. And then from there, they will do some more genetic tinkering with the gene code, and they will control the eye color, the hair color, and many other aspects of the kid. And then this kid will be born, and I ain't gonna lie to you, this kid is an absolute genius right now as a toddler. They're doing that now in 2020. Now that baby was born in 2022. So 2024 right now, currently. This is current era technology that we've rediscovered. They're talking about doing this a very, very long time ago. That's right, CRISPR. So then what happens here is somebody says, you know what, this guy won't take a wife. He just keeps traveling the world. He doesn't really have a lot of friends because he's really a hardcore dude, you know. Let's go ahead and fashion him a friend. Let's make him a friend, a mighty man that can hang out with him, a homeboy. So they say, you know, let's go ahead and make this guy So they go ahead and make him a friend. They literally make this guy. This guy doesn't know people. He doesn't know civilization. He's acting like a wild animal. And then they send this harlot to him to, have sex with him, give him a little bit of education, talk to him, let him see that he's not an animal, he's a human being, or hominid, an advanced hominid of some sort. And then they lure him back to the city where he's going to eventually meet Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh is having dreams about this guy. His mother interprets these dreams and tells him there's a mighty man coming to town, and you and this guy are going to be good buddies, close buddies, and this guy's going to save your life. So this is how this epic starts out, okay? Pretty interesting stuff. I mean, we're talking about text that's thousands and thousands of years old, and that leads up into Utnapishtim, who actually is, now we're getting into the Noah Ark story. So this is pretty interesting stuff. And like I say, when something is etched in stone, it makes it easier to copy it onto paper. I guarantee you there's very few books that have been copied from paper to paper that still exist. There may be some in Tibet, but those may be even just one-off copies. And if you touch those papers with your hands, they'll just disintegrate in your hand. Most of the text that made up religious texts came from ancient tablets from around the world, because those things can stand the test of time, you see? And the story of Noah, which you'll discover in reading this, is not even close to what some of the things they teach you in Bible study, like he had 2 of every kind of animal that came into the ark. That's literally absolutely fabricated, which you'll see soon. It's a fabrication. It didn't happen. They didn't have 2 cockroaches and 2 fleas and 2 gazelles and 2 lions and 2 giraffes, and didn't happen, guys. Stop telling your kids these fake fairy tales. Stop giving them the fake news. Just stop. Okay? Didn't happen. Just stop it. We got it. At some point, we got to stop. I mean, come on. 2 mosquitoes and, come on, man. Stop doing that. Let's wake up as a sentient being using logic. We have a quantum processor right here. A quantum processor. They're still trying to perfect the artificial ones, but we got a quantum processor in our heads, and we keep telling kids these fairy tales. You'll find that the story is much different. And then in this, I'm also going to get the new tablet that was discovered, which talks about the construction of Noah's Ark, which was not the shape of the boat in the biblical text and not the dimensions of the boat in the biblical text. Those are fully fabricated, okay? Fully fabricated. The dimensions of the boat, you'll see as I get into it when we get to that part. It might take a few more days to get to that. It's round. It was a round disc-shaped ship, not a gigantic boat. And he wasn't told to get 2 of every animal from all over the world. He was told to gather up his local livestock and some of his local flora and fauna that was right there next to him. Okay? And it's the reason why he was told and nobody else was told. And you'll find out the real reason. It wasn't because God wanted to spare his life. It's because his father wanted to spare his life. His father. And you'll find out who his father is as we continue on in this epic. All right. So let's get into tablet number 2. Enkidu sits in front of her. He's talking about the harlot now. Now, after this, 30 lines of text are missing because some fragments broke. All right. So it picks up where the fragments, the chipping is gone, and we got to start from where we know. All right. It says, why? His own counsel, at his instruction. Who knows his heart? Shamhat pulled off her clothing and clothed him with one piece, while she clothed herself with a second. She took hold of him as the gods do, and she brought him to the hut of the shepherds. The shepherds gathered all around him. They marveled to themselves how the youth resembles Gilgamesh. They're saying this guy Enkidu is just as big and as powerful as Gilgamesh. This is crazy. Tall in stature, he's a giant, towering up to the battlements. So we're talking about, okay, battlements, we're talking about these areas of these ancient megalithic walls where guards would be able to stand and launch weapons at oncoming intruders. You're talking about 12, 15 feet, maybe more. Okay? Just study this stuff. Okay, check this out. They say tall in stature, towering up to the battlements over the wall. Surely he was born in the mountains. His strength is as mighty as the meteorite of Anu. They place food in front of him. They place bear in front of him. Enkidu knew nothing about eating bread or food. Of drinking beer he had not been taught. The harlot spoke to Enkidu, saying, "Eat the food. Enkidu, it is the way one lives. Drink the beer." As in the custom of the land, Enkidu ate the food until he was sated. He drank the beer, 7 jugs, and became expansive and sang with joy. He was elated, and his face glowed. He splashed his shaggy body with water. He rubbed himself with oil. He turned into a human. That's funny. He had to get drunk to turn into a human. Oh man. If you remember in tablet number 1, up until this point, he didn't eat food. He only drank water. Water was his only sustenance. He didn't need food. He only needed water. He didn't need plants. Well, he ate a little bit of grass and he drank water. That was his only thing. Now he's eating everything. Now he's a human. He put on some clothing and became like a warrior. He took up his weapon and chased lions so that the shepherds could eat. He routed the wolves. He chased the lions. This guy's chasing lions. Talking about how big this guy is. A lion is hardly afraid of anything. A lion will run only because it doesn't want to get injured, which means this guy was massive. With Enkidu as their guard, the herders could lie down. This guy was protecting the herders and the herd of animals by himself from wild animals. A wakeful man, a singular youth. He was twice as tall as a normal man. He was twice as tall as a normal man. So you're talking about this guy's obviously in the 12-foot range, right? If these Sumerian people were not tiny people. So this was a big dude. 10, 12 feet was a reasonable number. The next 33 lines are missing in the standard version. Lines 57 and 86 are taken from the Old Babylonian. Just to give you a note here. Then he raised his eyes and saw a man. He said to the harlot, "Shamhat, have that man go away. Why has he come? I will call out his name." The harlot called out to the man and went over to him and spoke with him. "Young man, where are you hurrying? Why this arduous pace?" The young man spoke, saying, "Enkidu, they have invited me to a wedding, as is the custom of the people, the selection of brides. I have heaped up tasty delights for the wedding on the ceremonial platter. For the king of broad-marted Uruk, open is the wall, open is the veil of the people for choosing a girl. For Gilgamesh, the king of broad-marted Uruk, open is the veil of the people for choosing. He will have intercourse with the destined wife. He first, the husband afterward. This is ordered by the council of Anu." So what they're saying here is this guy's going to have intercourse with the wife and then the husband next. This is ordered by the council of Anu. From the severing of his umbilical cord, it has been destined for him. At the young man's speech, his Enkidu's face flushed with anger. Several lines now are missing from here. Enkidu walked in front and Shamhat after him. Enkidu walked down the street of Uruk Haven. Mighty, he blocked the way through Uruk, the sheepfold. The land of Uruk stood around him. The whole land assembled about him. The populace was thronging around him. The men were clustered about him and kissed at his feet if he were a little baby. Suddenly, a handsome young man, for Ishara, the bed of the night. Marriage is ready. For Gilgamesh, as for God, a counterpart is set up. Enkidu blocked the entry to the marital chamber, as would not allow Gilgamesh to be brought in. They grappled with each other at the entry to the marital chamber. In the street, they attacked one another publicly in the public square of the land. The doorposts trembled and the walls actually shook. You're talking about two giants fighting over one woman, and one's supposed to marry her, and the other one's just had sex with her, and he's like, man, I got to keep this for me. You can't have this now. It's too late. I put my mark on this. So now these guys are battling each other. They're battling each other, and the whole city is shaking. Then after this, 42 lines, unfortunately, are missing. Gilgamesh bent his knees. With his other foot on the ground, his anger abated, and he turned his chest away. After he turned his chest, Enkidu said to Gilgamesh, your mother bore you ever unique. The wild cow of the enclosure, Ninsun, your head is elevated over other men. Enlil has destined for you the kingship over the people. Then 19 lines are chipped away. They kissed each other and became friends. Not like on the lips, like, that ritual stuff that they do like in the Slavic countries. The old Babylonian becomes fragmentary. So basically we're losing a little bit here and there. His strength is the mightiest in the land. His strength is mighty as the meteorite of Anu. Now this meteorite of Anu is obviously one hell of a stone. And I believe that the meteorite that's located in the cube that the people of the Islamic faith, the Muslims go to at Mecca, there's a gigantic megalithic granite box that they walk around counterclockwise. And there's a magnificent meteorite in the corner, embedded into the corner of this megalithic granite stone box that they go to, and they walk around this box. I believe that is the meteorite of Anu. Till this very day, it's still being worshipped. Okay? His strength is the mightiest in the land. His strength is as mighty as the meteorite of Anu. The mother of Gilgamesh spoke to Gilgamesh, saying, Rimat Ninsun said to her son, Rimar Ninsun, my son, plaintively, she went up into his Shamash gateway. Plaintively, she spoke, she implored. Enkidu has no father or mother. Enkidu has no father or mother. He never did, because he was fashioned. He was created. He's like a artificially created avatar. His shaggy hair, no one cuts. He was born in the wilderness. No one raised him. Enkidu was standing there and heard that speech. He sat down and wept. His eyes filled with tears. His arms felt limp. His strength weakened. They took each other by the hand, and their hands, like Enkidu, made a declaration to Gilgamesh. In order to protect the Cedar forest, Enlil assigned Humbaba as a terror to human beings. Humbaba's roar is a roar of the flood. His mouth is fire. His breath is death. He can hear 100 leagues away any rustling in the forest. This is incredible. Now let's take a look at this. Enlil, aka Yahweh in the Bible, he creates this thing that is something like a monster, but it's really a machine of some type. It's not a person. It's clearly not a person. Humbaba's roar is a flood. His mouth is fire. His breath is death. We're talking about some type of deadly machine. He says this machine can hear up to 100 leagues away. Okay? Up to 100 leagues. That's a far distance. It can hear rustling in the forest. Now, that's powerful. Okay? And I want to just take a quick stop here. I want to get this exact distance in miles if I can real quick. We're talking about 300 miles because a league is 100 miles. So we're talking about 300 miles. This thing can hear into the forest, wrestling of a bush. Why did he do this? Let me get back to my my text here. Enlil did this. He created this thing because people were deforesting too much. They were tearing down the entire forest. Same thing going on right now. They had no control. He had to say, look, we can't let this, we can't let this forest become torn completely down. We need this forest. So what did he do? He creates this Humbaba, which is this type of technology, in my opinion. You might not see it that way, but when I read this, I read technology. And if you don't see it that way, guess what? That's okay. You don't have to see it my way, but that's what I see. He said it could hear up to 100 leagues away any rustling in the forest. He said in his forest, and Lil owns this forest. Will go down into the forest. Who would go down into the forest? And Lil assigned him as a terror to human beings. And whoever goes down into the forest, paralysis will strike. Gilgamesh spoke to Enkidu saying, what you say? Then 42 lines are messed up here from the text. Who, my friend, can ascend to the heavens? Only the gods can dwell forever with Shamash. As for human beings, their days are numbered. Whatever they keep trying to achieve is but wind. In other words, it's like waste. Now you are afraid of death. What has become of your bold strength? I will go in front of you, and your mouth can call out. Go on closer. Do not be afraid. Should I fall? I have established my fame. They will say it was Gilgamesh who locked in battle with Humbaba the Terrible. So they're getting ready to go attack this thing. You were born and raised in the wilderness. A lion leaped on you. So you have experienced it all. I will undertake it, and I will cut down the cedar. It is I who will establish fame for eternity. Come, my friend, I will go over to the forge and have them cast the weapons in our presence. So they're getting ready to head into the forest and attack this Humbaba, as well as cut down some trees. Holding each other by the hand, they went over to the forge. The craftsman sat and discussed with another. We should fashion the axe. The hatchet should be 1 talent in weight. Man, that's heavy. Jeez. 1 talent. The sword should be 1 talent. The armor is 1 talent. Their armor, Gilgamesh said to the men of Uruk, listen to me, men. You men of Uruk who know I want to make myself mighty and will go on a distant journey. I will face fighting such as I have never known. I will set out on a road I have never traveled. Give me your blessings. I will enter the city of the gate of Uruk. I will devote myself to the New Year's festival. I will perform the New Year's ceremonies in the New Year's festival will take place with celebrations. They will keep shouting, hurrah! And Enkidu spoke to the elders. What the men of Uruk say to him, that he must nor go to the cedar forest. That means they're saying don't go. Nor go means don't go. In a war, nor go. The journey is not to be made. They're telling him, don't, this is against our rules, don't do this. A man who, the guardian of the cedar forest, the noble councils of Uruk, arose and delivered their advice to Gilgamesh. You are young, Gilgamesh. Your heart carries you off. You do not know what you are talking about. Then in some areas that's a little bit messed up, says, gave birth to you. Humbaba's roar as a flood. His mouth is fire. His breath is death. He can hear rustling in the forest 100 leagues away. Who would go down to his forest? Who among even the Igigi gods can confront him? Now they're talking about the Igigi. The Igigi were mighty men of old. They were working class Anunnaki, extremely strong beings with incredible levels of knowledge, construction knowledge. They helped build the cities. It wasn't mankind that built some of these super ancient cities before the flood. Mankind was forced to build after the flood, according to the tablets. Before the flood, the Igigi were the ones doing all the building. Then they became the teachers of construction. They were the brick masons. In order to keep the Cedar forest safe, Enlil assigned him as a terror to human beings. Gilgamesh listened to the statement of his noble counselors. And then about 5 tablets are missing there. So, you see, this is getting, for me, it's kind of exciting. I don't know. Some people be like, man, I don't even know what this guy's reading. This is some boring stuff. But for me, this is exciting stuff. It's like I'm going into some of the oldest text that exist, that's written by our ancient ancestors, that's telling a story of a guy who was a massive being, a giant that was genetically created, and his friend was also genetically created in some way. And these two guys are massive, powerful people that want to make a name for themselves. So they're going off on a hero's journey together to make a name for themselves, to make themselves famous. It's just like, nothing's changed. It's the same old stuff going on in this world. But the evidence of these things that are waiting on them, like this animal or this monster, or maybe this machine that's waiting to protect the forest, this protector of the forest, maybe it's some type of a massive, Boston Dynamics type robot. Who knows? But it literally spews some type of material out of its mouth that will kill you. That don't sound like a human being to me. This sounds like a weapon that's protecting the forest. The Enlil says, nobody's gonna mess with my forest, I don't care. And I'm gonna put a protector that can hear up to 300 miles away. If one bush is rustling in the wind, it's gonna go inspect it. And for it to hear something 300 miles away, that means it can get to that point very fast. Because if I'm rustling in the woods and I'm getting ready to chop down a tree 300 leagues from 300 miles away from this guy, right? Or wherever this machine or wherever this thing is, and it hears me, it obviously has the capability of getting to me at a very rapid pace, covering a massive amount of miles in a very short period of time. Most likely before I'm done doing what I'm trying to do, so that it can capture me and kill me. We're talking about technology because a man can't run that fast. This is crazy stuff. I love reading this stuff because it takes me way back. And it's like I'm seeing through the eyes of ancient ancestors and what they experienced, what they saw, what they were told to write down, what they knew, and how they can describe what they saw to the best of their ability and how life was in those times. And you can kind of almost see that it's not too far from where we are now in terms of how people live. They got New Year's Eve party celebrations. You got harlots, we call them hoes. They got, people who like sex, they want to drink beer, all this crazy stuff is going on. And the very first recipe for beer at the British Museum, that's where it exists, is on a Sumerian tablet. And it says that the great god Anu, you're talking about the Anunnaki and these beings, they bestowed the recipe for beer onto mankind. And they gave us the recipe on how to brew hops or how to, do the hops to make the beer and all that, ferment the hops and all this stuff. It's all on ancient tablets. We didn't invent beer. It was given to us. The knowledge of how to make it was given to mankind. Something you can actually go travel and see that tablet with your own eyes. Crazy stuff. This is why I like this stuff. It's pretty interesting. You know, what we kind of think we know about the ancient past based on what we learned in school is not even close to true reality. And to me, couldn't some of this text be, you know, based on the person's own perception who wrote it and etched it? Yeah, of course it is. But I think that the further back you go, the closer you get to real information. You're never going to get 100% of the information because it's people that are making these texts. But when somebody goes through the trouble of using a stylus and a wedge in wet clay and turning it into stone so they can last through the ages, and we're talking about thousands and thousands of years ago, we're getting as close we can, as close as we can possibly get to the actual facts. Okay? And then from there, you know, depends on extrapolation, hypothesis, speculation comes into play. You know, it's just great. I just love it. It's like becoming a CSI agent for, you know, ancient information and trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. It's pretty cool stuff to me.